Welcome to topic 5, gender and leadership. So this is a continuation on from the lecture I started, which was topic 4. Unfortunately, each of these videos only play for 15 minutes. So in this topic, which is in week 5, I'm just going to go over this. I always like to start with a question as I always do. And I want you to respond to it. So the question is, when I say the words gender and leadership, what comes to mind? So what images are evoked for you? What do you think of when you think of gender and leadership? What are the kind of normal things when we talk about gender and leadership that come to mind? So what we're wanting you to do in this subject and in this topic is to broaden your gaze to consider not only women in leadership, but also LGBTIQ, that is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, that's intersex, not with the extra ER, and queer, and to intersectionality. Now, intersex is when somebody is indeterminate. It's indeterminate whether they're male or female. They may be, they may have, it might be a genital predisposition to one or to both, and there might be a chromosomal thing as well. And intersectionality is where different identities intersex. So, for instance, you may have a lesbian person who's also white and who may be deaf. You may have an Indigenous person who is a female and is lesbian. So there's intersectionality as well. So the point I'm trying to make here is that we sometimes view people as being one thing or another, but it's much more complex than that. So quite often when you think of the word, you think of gender and leadership, you think of women and you think of women in leadership. And I've got a picture there of Anita Roddick, who was the founder of the Body Shop, who has sadly passed away, but founded the Body Shop and really founded it on a real vision and a real way of being collective in her leadership. And she was quite transformational, and we'll touch on transformational later in this lecture. And then I've got some other pictures there. This is a lovely picture of a family and they're supporting the LGBTQ rights. And then we have trans women as well. And this is I'm trying to think of her name now. It's completely lost me. Kate McCarthy, who was in the armed forces, very high up senior, and at just over 50, transitioned to a woman. So he's a trans woman. So we've got women, we've got trans people, and we've got the LGBTQ. Then I ask you the question, do women and men lead differently? This is a really important question because quite often we think they do. However, Eagly and Carly, whose terrific book Through the Labyrinth, and Deborah Rode in The Difference Difference Makes, both found that the differences were not really that outstanding, that quite often women would try to take on more masculine behaviours to actually have more status and to be listened to. But there's not a lot of differences in the way women and men lead. However, there is more of a predisposition for women to be more participative, transformational and nurturing. And so the transformational aspect was an interesting one because, and I'd say, as I said, Anita Roddick was transformational because quite often they inspire others to follow them because they're so, they have a very strong vision, etc. But the biggest impact really comes from sex stereotyping and in-group, out-group preferencing. So there's a real impact that people think that men and women lead differently, and so that's why I asked you that question, because we're stereotyped. And then women can be part of the in-group or they can't or they're quite often not. So the in-group's quite often males, because males can go off to the pub together in the evening. This is the traditional. I know that this is changing a lot. And then there's out-group preferencing, so quite often women or trans women and trans people and people from LGBTIQ are quite often part of the out-group. Okay. And Amanda Sinclair has written too. She's a professor of the Melbourne Business School, very well known in the leadership literature. She was a co-author of the first reading that I had. I'm not too sure that I had you reading in this subject. That's right, by Michelle Evans and Amanda Sinclair. And she's written two very good books, Leadership for the Disillusioned and Leading Mindfully. And she identifies feminine perspectives of leadership. She has a really good, in the Leadership for the Disillusioned, she has a very good case study of Christina Nixon, who was the person in charge of the police force in Victoria. A very interesting study of her, and identifies how the dress as well. If she dresses in a powerful way, she's much more. She's got a better status. People look to her more, and you can see that with Kate McCarthy. But if she didn't dress that way, or if she just wore a dress that, a floral dress or something like that, she didn't have as much status, and people didn't kind of want to follow her as much. So there are differences in that regard, and that comes down to that sex stereotyping. So I'm going to just lead you through a little case study, and this is a really important case study. It's a case study of a senior transgender woman leader from our university, and this is based on her presentation that she did to my Leadership for Women group last year and to my Difference in Leadership group. And so take a breath. So how would you as a leader handle the disclosure of a trans person in your organisation? So I want you to think about that. And I like the little picture, oh my God. So think about that. How would you handle it? So first things first, how would you respond to that disclosure? So somebody comes up to you, they said they're trans. How would you respond? And we'll work through this. So who do you tell? Who in your organisation do you think you can tell to get support for this person and for yourself as the leader and the manager of that person? Who can I ask about this? What can I say to a third party? So, there's nuances around, and there's protocols and ways of doing these things. And who really needs to know? Do you know who really needs to know? And how are you going to manage this? And how are you going to lead in this space as well when you've got other people that you have to actually communicate with and lead, considering this person? So I want you to spend a few minutes jotting down your thoughts. I'm going to move on because we'll run out of time otherwise, but I want you to think about what you would do, and this is what happened in our organisation. Okay, so the Vice-Chancellor was told straight away. So the senior leader of our organisation was told, and I say that he is very supportive of all different people. He was the first Vice-Chancellor in Australia who wrote a statement of support for same-sex marriage. A very brave thing to do. The manager of equity was told, and protocols were established, and that was the former manager. I was the manager that came in after this person, and she was put in contact with counselling services, and the head of school in the building of which she was cited was told as well. So that person was told, the person on site. And then I've got the gender centre there because they went to the gender centre. There's gender centres in most main cities. So they got expert help, and that expert help also helped them with a lot of the protocols and processes we needed to put in place, and to also facilitate some training for staff and some awareness. And plans were made to officially advise management about the gender transition. So all of those things were put in place, and templates and protocols and procedures, which I updated when I came in, and I helped others transition as well. We've had a few now. This was my last role just before I came into this role. And a communication strategy was put in place as well. Communicate, communicate, communicate. That's so important. And then there was a method for dealing with internal and external inquiries about the old name. The databases had to all be fixed up. She had to get a new birth certificate. We had to erase records. We had to fix up emails. So we had to engage the Division of Technical Services, the Division of Technical Services. So the IT department, they helped us. The Student Records Department, etc., 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 the Human Resources Department. So they were all updated, and everyone worked under a system of really goodwill. And the staff was provided as well, and that was brilliant. The training was provided. And we've had more cases since then, and those protocols have been updated and they're in place and they've been really good. So I want you to think about if someone came and disclosed to you. This is a really good case study. And now she's moved on. People around her have moved on as well. Sometimes the history hurts her. She takes her role as an advocate for gender diversity seriously and is doing a lot of research in that space. And she takes her role as a senior woman in leadership and management seriously. And I've added this, she's not labelled as a transgender leader anymore. So I've been in her presence when people who knew her before have met her again and didn't realise who she was, which was interesting in and of itself, or had never met her before and had no idea that she was transgender and had been a man before. So we didn't label her a transgender leader because she was different, etc. And you have to look at that in your organisations as well. Sometimes we put these people in to do a whole range of things because they're different, and sometimes they just want to be the same. So it's really important for you to consider that. So I want you to watch and then we'll discuss, but I want you to go to this Vimeo and the link's there, and I'll put the link in as well and you can click on that link. It's a really important video that I won't go to now, but I want you to look at this video. It's made by the Australian Institute of Company Directors. It's very powerful, and it was made because they identified that 30%, they had a 30% by 2018 report. So their aim was to have 30% of women, 30% representation of female directors on all the ASX 200 companies. But there's only 30% has only been achieved in 74 of those companies. And so I want you to look at that video because it was made in response to that. Some of you might get your hackles up at first, but then move through that, particularly some of the men. Move through that because it's actually got a very powerful story that is being supported by the Australian Institute of Company Directors, and it's also being supported by the Press Progress, which we'll go on to in a minute. It's really important that we start to consider these things because they've done this video in response to a survey that they found the questions that are asked of prospective board members are sometimes questions that you really shouldn't ask at all, and some of those are in this video. But how do you recruit for women or diverse leaders in your organisation? Okay, I want you to think about that, and I want you to think about what can you do to accelerate gender parity. So the Press for Progress movement came out, is very strong. International Women's Day, it was elevated even more. And these are some of the things that they had in there, but these are clues to what you can do to accelerate gender parity. You will maintain a gender parity mindset. You will challenge stereotypes and bias, forge positive visibility of women, influence the benefits and actions of others, and celebrate women's achievements. So that's just some ideas. So these are the references that I've got for both topic 4 and topic 5. If you have any questions or want to contact me, this is where you go. Okay? I'm sorry again that we've had to record this because of the service disruption. I hope you enjoy these 2 lectures. I trust that you will do those exercises and respond to those questions. And next week we'll do a little recap of this and I'll respond to your digital identity stories. I'll give you feedback on your assessment 1. Okay, cheers. Have a good weekend.